Meeting to order. I apologize for our late start. We had a double header today and squeeze in a quick bite to eat before we started tonight. I want to welcome all of you to the August 20th Durango City Council meeting, and thank you for those of you joining us live on DGov. We're happy to have you all here. Just a quick reminder before we start, I always like to start with the fact that as a council we have adopted Civility First Pledge program, which is a program put in place by our Durango Community Relations Commission. And this is a program to promote civility and respect where everyone is treated with civility and respect. And we do that because here in Durango, we recognize that civility is more than just simple politeness. It is a baseline of respect that we owe one another in public life. And as your elected officials, you can expect that we will demonstrate civility and respect at all times in all form of communication, because here at the local level in politics, we get to set our own tune. And that's the tune that we're dancing to tonight. Public participation and 3 public hearings tonight. Please sign up for public participation, if you will, on these forms below so that we can run our meetings efficiently. And with that, Ms. Phillips, may we please have a roll call?
Certainly. Councilor Baxter?
Present.
Councilor Bettine?
Here.
Councilor Noseworthy?
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Brookie?
Here.
And Mayor Youssef?
Here. City Council, do we have any actual or perceived conflicts of interest this evening? Seeing none, we have 2 presentations tonight. Ms. Brown? Starting with a monthly financial report.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. So tonight I'll be reporting on the July 2019 financial report for all of the funds in the city. We'll start out with the general fund as the largest fund. Revenues continue to come in strong. They're up about 6% over 2018 through the end of July. We've collected about $24 million as of right now, and our budget is about $42.9 million. 56% of the budget has been collected in revenue so far this year, as compared to a year ago, 54.4% at this time. So we're right on track of where we are usually collecting at this time of the year. Sales tax increased quite a bit for the month of July, but year to date we're at 2.5% over 2018. If we remember, we budgeted 0%, so that's a healthy number for us right now. Building permit use tax, that tax that is paid on building permits continues to be strong as we are in the building construction season during the summer. It is up about 11.5%. Motor vehicle use tax is also pretty significantly up at 25.7% over a year ago. So that's the tax you pay, use tax you pay when you license your vehicles. So lots of new vehicles out there on the roads, it appears. Looking at the general fund expenditures, we've spent about almost $23 million through July, which compares to about $22.6 million in 2018. So we've spent about 54.3% of the budget through the first 7 months. Currently, we're in the process of reviewing forecasts for 2019. We're working in the departments and budgets trying to come up with what our forecasts look like for this year so that we have a better forecast in the next couple of months as we get through the summer season. This chart shows general fund revenues and expenditures kind of in with a 5-year average by month. So as you can see, July's revenues are pretty significantly higher than the 5-year average. They're about $1.5 million above the 5-year average. Came in really strong. Part of that is due to the administration fee that the general fund charges the enterprise funds. That's paid quarterly, so part of that is in there, but that was also in January and April. So we did see quite a jump in revenue coming in this month. Expenditures are definitely below the 5-year average, and we've been trying to keep those under that 5-year average. If you look at the yellow line going across, you'll see it's about $500,000 under that average in July. General fund balance, there was no change on what our projections are on this fund balance right now. We did 2 appropriations in July, which I'll show you later, but they were due to grant revenues. So we weren't using any fund balance, so that expected fund balance has not changed in the last month. So to the good news, sales tax for the month of July was up 12.8%. Now, if you look at a year ago, it was when the 416 fire was going on and we were down 5.6. But being down 5.6 to being up 12.8 is a huge increase for us. Some of that is because of the fire, but I think the economy jumped back in June. I think it was a busy June. When we look at different categories, as we look in the SIC, the tourist categories are up significantly over a year ago, which you would expect with the fire happening last June. It's the strongest monthly collection since October of 2015, and before that it was which was over of October of 2014. Prior to that, it's the next largest month was February 2013 over February of 2012. So great numbers coming in at the beginning of the busy season, where we can just hope the rest of the summer is that strong as well. Use tax was also up. It was up 81.1%, which is a smaller dollar amount, so if you're up 20,000, it seems like it's a large number. But year to date, we're up 15.3%. Lodgers taxes also saw a large increase of 13.9% for the month. Again, attributed probably to the 416 fire a year ago. And we're up 4.2% year to date on that revenue. Looking at the monthly sales tax collections, just diving a little bit more, showing each of the months for the last 5 or 6 years. That 12.8% we've collected $2.5 million in sales tax revenue. If you look at the chart below, you can see July 2019 is that orange bar. We are finally above that 5-year average for sales tax collections, which is a nice number to be hitting as well. This month, that July, is close to January. January is always our largest collection month, but as you can see, the orange lines in January and July, we were right on the same as January. So January, July, and October are usually our largest months, so to have a huge increase in that month does help the revenue as we move forward through the year. A little bit more detail on revenue versus the sales tax revenue versus the budget. So the month was about $145,790 over budget, and to date we're about $230,000 over budget in that sales tax revenue. As I talked a little bit about the different categories in sales tax, this is broken down by the SIC, and if you look at the largest increases from the same month a year ago, the largest one was liquor stores. It was up 122% over 2018. Utilities and telecom were up 47%. Grocery stores, hardware and lumber, and restaurants saw about a 15% increase each. Gifts and galleries were up 13.8%. Hotels and motels were up 16.2%. Interestingly, retail marijuana was down about 7%, which we haven't seen that trend in a while. But the categories that were up significantly, definitely all tourism related, as well as locals, but definitely showing that we do have a robust economy right now with the tourists. Sales tax by area, as you can see, South Durango continues to be the largest. That has the largest retailers in that area at just over about $1 million this month. Central Business District is right behind them at 31% this month of about $770,000. So those are the different areas. So moving on to the enterprise funds, the water and sewer revenues continue to trend a little bit lower with the wet, cold spring, as we talked about last month, and not as dry of a summer until right now. We're a month behind, so July or June was still pretty wet. We weren't irrigating a lot, so that number hopefully will tick up a little bit next month. Airport, Sustainable Services, Transportation Services Fund all continue to bring in more revenues than they're expecting, and they are all showing a strong revenue growth. On the expense side of the enterprise funds, The water and sewer funds continue to be within a budget. It does show that they have a larger percentage of their budget spent, but that was because of the transfer to the capital projects funds that we do at the beginning of the year. Both those funds had large transfers for the administration building and Vector truck this year, so moving those funds. Airport, again, sustainable services and transportation services continue to spend less than they were a year ago, and they continue to be within appropriation levels as well. Capital improvement projects, this list, these are the projects over 500,000. It hasn't changed since last month. We have several large projects going on. We have, the ART North Trail project up north, about 8 million. We have a park maintenance shop that is clear or coming to completion. We have the Santa Rita water reclamation facility that is nearing completion as well at the end of September. And then we have lots of construction projects at the airport, over $9 million in investment going out there right now at the airport. As I said earlier, we had 2 additional appropriations in July. They were both in the general fund and both related to grants for the police department. So those are 100% grant funding projects, so there's no money coming out of the general fund balance at this time for those projects. Oops. So the budgeted fund balances have not changed because we have not increased the budget, and we're not taking any more funds out of that general fund balance, nor have we done any other additional appropriations out of for any of the other funds. So these budgeted fund balances are still the same as they were last month at this time. And thank you for your time, and we take any questions if you've had any.
Thank you for this report. I do have one question for you.
Sure.
You broke out the sales tax by sales tax, use tax, lodger's tax. What's the total year-to-date, up or down? Is that in here?
Sales tax is up 2.5%.
Right, but do you have a combined total?
No, we don't combine them. No.
You don't combine them?
We do not combine them. So if you look at this chart here, you have sales taxes up 2.5%, lodgers is up 4.2%, and use tax is up 15.3%.
You always keep them separate?
We keep them separate, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I had 2 questions on the general fund expenditures. I think what I realized is that you're taking 12 months and kind of dividing it in half for January through July as far as where you should be in relationship to budget to actual. So I realized that this probably has something to do with it, but I noticed public information expenses were only 37% of the budget, and they were way down from last year, as well as community support and miscellaneous non-departmental. So I was wondering if there's something that we're anticipating coming in the future that'll make that balance, or?
So in the Public Information Office, they've been down a staff member since February, so that is the biggest issue. That's the biggest reason why they're down.
Okay.
Because that staff person just came on about 3 weeks ago now. So that will start showing up a little bit higher. The other one was community support. The majority of that is there's $484,000 CDBG grant that for the homes fund that we haven't passed those funds through yet. So that will be coming in the next couple months as well. All the community support agencies that we fund are either paid monthly or quarterly, usually. So that's part of it, and then that grant is in there as well.
Okay.
And then non-departmental, last year we had a transfer to the capital projects fund. This year we don't. That is part of what that difference is.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question, and if I missed it, please forgive me. First of all, thank you for this, and it was really helpful to have it in advance. Thank you. I'm on the page 13 on the capital improvements project. Capital projects, I guess is what, would it, for me, it would be useful if you could have a bottom line there that had previously approved projects that haven't quite been fully, haven't been addressed. Not every single one, but the big ticket items that might have been approved in previous years that we still haven't seen expenditures on. Did I miss that
And
somewhere?
those will be on here if they're greater than 500,000. If they're less than 500,000, I don't put them on here, but because there's a
Okay,
lot
that's
that
what
are
I was
less than 500, but they would be on here if the budget was greater than 500.
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much for the presentation and for the update.
Yeah.
We are doing this on a monthly basis, and with that, Councillor Brookie is going to introduce
I asked Tony Beccari, our airport manager, to come, and we just had our once a month airport commission meeting last Thursday, and we had a lot of good news, as well as a lot of the community's concerned about cancellations, particularly in our community, and it's a little frustrating. And asked Tony to talk a little bit about that, as well as some of the good things that are happening at the airport. So, thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dean. Good evening. As Dean mentioned, I'm Tony Beccari, Director of Aviation at the Durango La Plata County Airport. I'll just give you a short update. Feel free to interrupt with questions as we go. First off, I just want to give you a brief context of where we're at in 2019 with airport activity. Our total passenger traffic is up 3.3% year to date. We've had an extremely strong summer. As Julie just mentioned, we've seen that in town. It's been the same situation at the airport. We had the busiest June of all time. We're up 8.1% over 2018, as well as followed by the busiest July of all time, which was up 6.7% over July of 2018. Looking back at last year, unlike the city with sales tax, the airport was actually up last summer despite the fire impacts. So when you see these percentage growths over 2018, they are linear growth. It's not just recovery from 416 fire impacts. July was actually also our record month of all time at the airport. We served just over 40,000 total passengers over the course of the month, the busiest single month we've seen in the history at the Durango La Plata County Airport. And our current growth rate this year will easily surpass 2014 as the busiest of all time at the airport as well. So if you look historically, the airport enplanements have grown aggressively through the late 2000s and early 2010s, peaked out in 2014 and had basically a plateau from 2014 to 17. Last year we were up 2% from 17 to 18, and this year we're eclipsing that. So that growth trend is reestablishing. Airline seat capacity is up just under 8% so far this year. Parking lot revenue is up 6.5%. Rental car gross revenues are matching our total passenger traffic at just over 3% year to date, and air freight is up 9%. So every major metric that we're seeing at the airport in terms of activity and revenue generation is looking positive this year. Just as a reminder, I know everyone's familiar with the air service profile at the airport, but always good to remind and discuss it briefly. We currently have daily nonstop service to Denver on United Airlines, as well as daily nonstops to Dallas and Phoenix on American Airlines. We are also seeing summer seasonal Saturday service on American to Chicago and Los Angeles, and on United to Chicago and Houston. Those have been in place since early June and continue to run through the end of the summer on American. United does carry their 2 routes to the end of October. Discussions with those carriers about future development on those routes is just now starting to get moving. Overall, they're going to want to let most of the summer period play out, get their internal metrics about what they're seeing with utilization on those routes, and then the airport will begin discussions with them about what that looks like to continue that service into the future and ultimately grow it. We're very optimistic about the opportunities that exist in that area. And as Dean mentioned, airline flight cancellations. So there was a recent article in the Durango Herald that did accurately reference that flight cancellations at DRO are up double from this point in 2018. It's an unfortunate situation. I just want to provide a little context to it though, overall. So those initial statements are very much factual, but I think the picture is much more positive than what you might read when you just read the singular headline. We've had a total of 115 flight cancellations through July. That's 4.68% of the just over 2,400 overall scheduled flights, departures out of our airport. 72% of those cancellations are attributable to weather. This year has been an exceptionally significant weather event year, and what we're not really talking about here is Durango. It's the biggest context I'd like to lend is that almost any regional airport, Durango notwithstanding, is essentially dependent on its hub airports that serve it to provide consistent and reliable connectivity. And unfortunately this year, 2 of our biggest hubs, and really all 3, as we'll talk about shortly here, have seen significant increases in cancellations with major weather events. If you remember those news articles from back in February and March that say, big headline, Denver International cancels 2,000 flights, we were some of those flights, absolutely, overall. So as I mentioned, the 3 hub airports that we connect to most consistently are Denver, Dallas, and Phoenix. And you can see the cancellation rates at those 3 airports are up very significantly. this year. Denver most significantly up 274%, which is really quite an astounding number for such a significant hub, which is currently the 4th busiest airport in the United States. Dallas is currently up over 100%, and Phoenix is up over 100% as well. So when we talk about cancellation challenges at Durango, it's not a cop-out to essentially say that the cancellation issues aren't just a Durango issue, they're really a nationwide issue, and specifically a Mountain West issue with some of the weather impacts we've seen this year. Despite those issues, on-time departures at the airport do remain almost exactly even with the nationwide average. We're at 78.08%, and the nationwide average is 78.4%, so essentially even on that front. And it's also important to remember that airlines make these decisions independent from the airport. As much as I'd like to control airline flight cancellations, it's not something that the airport nor the city can control directly. We, of course, work with our airline partners to ensure the highest level of service and reliability into the market, but they don't make these decisions independently, and they make them almost exclusively based on safety concerns. And this is just the last little bit of context. This is a whole slew of airports. We don't need to go through every one of them, but you can see the bars here. It's working backwards. The blue is current year 2019, orange is 2018, and gray is 2017. And what you can really see, if you just look at it, is that in every one of these snapshot airports, you can see huge spikes in cancellation rates in 2019. The blue bar is up almost double in every one of these across the board. So whether you started as a very low cancellation airport or a very high cancellation airport, across the board historically over the last 3 years, you've seen significant increases overall. So once again, lending credence to say, yes, we understand that there's a challenge here, and our customers and users are experiencing that, but that's really been, unfortunately, something that's been seen system-wide across the country and across the Mountain West. While I have the floor, just talk about a couple of the things with the airport. We have a lot of exciting projects going on right now. There's over $10 million in airport capital projects that are currently underway in 2019. So a lot of fun and exciting things to happen are happening right now. We're currently reconstructing a portion of our main taxiway at the airport. That's a $7.5 million project that leverages almost $7 million of federal funding. It's about halfway complete and currently occurring without disrupting any kind of airport operations. We're in the midst of a terminal improvement project. This is an exciting project that we're about 55 to 60% complete overall. And just as a reminder, what we're doing there is we're constructing a new 4,500 square foot baggage makeup facility. This is where the airlines process bags effectively, and then remodeling the interior of the airport to essentially double airline leasable space. So the airlines are very excited about this. It's going to give them a better platform for operations, improve their efficiency, and open up a turnkey vacant space for us to better recruit additional competition in the market, which is really the airport's best mechanism to facilitate, improved costs in terms of airfares, improved reliability, is to facilitate competition in the market. That's really our role as the facility operator, not to run the flights, but to facilitate that competition. So this project will give us, like I said, a better platform to recruit and attract additional air service into the market. And you can look for updates. We're likely going to be opening that in some sort of a grand opening ceremony towards the end of September or early October, so coming up quick. You're very familiar with land acquisition. I won't dwell on that. And the last one I just want to touch on is our terminal area plan study. We'll be in front of the City Council again in early November to unveil some design alternatives that'll be looking into the future of DRO. Obviously, we're underway on the terminal improvement project I just described, but this visioning will help us to look at what the long-term development, the 20-plus year development range is going to be at the airport post-land acquisition as we re-entrench on our existing site and look at development opportunities that can be phased and funded at the airport. It's just a couple of fun photos of what we've got going on right now out there. And I always like to take the opportunity before we wrap up just to talk about the economic impact of the airport. We are a self-sustaining economic engine for the region. I think the council is very familiar, but oftentimes the public just doesn't realize that the airport is indeed an enterprise fund that accepts no local tax funding. It is 100% funded from user fees that are collected from our tenants and users at the airport. And that's something that we're very proud of and excited to continue to facilitate. And our economic impact per economic impact studies currently totals about $160 million annually for La Plata County as a part of an overall $280 million economic impact for the Four Corners region. And last but not least, also don't want to miss the opportunity to look at recognizing and really spotlighting the efforts of the airport staff. We have 23 full-time employees and 2 part-time staff that maintain a significant amount of grounds and facilities and are responsible for safety and operations at a facility that pushes through almost 400,000 passengers a year and do it seamlessly, and it's something that they really deserve recognition for on a public platform. And with that, that's the end of my quick update. I'll take any questions you might have.
Thank you.
Very nice. Good job.
Good job.
Thanks for the update.
Tony, you might tell them about that little new phenomenon with direct flights from LA and
Yeah.
continuing on to Chicago?
Yeah, so this is our fun thing. So Durango Regional Airport's not exactly known as connecting hubs overall, but it is a pretty fun little phenomenon, as Dean mentioned, that we've seen this year. So as you know, we have our seasonal service to Los Angeles and Chicago. So it turns out that American Airlines has some capacity problems between LA and Chicago, i.e. they have a lot of people trying to cross that route. They're overbooked on a lot of seats. And so what their staff in Los Angeles have figured out is that there's a nonstop on American on Saturdays from LA to Durango, and then about 2 hours later, there's a nonstop from here to Chicago O'Hare. And so we have become, on a very small scale, an actual connecting hub in the sense that every Saturday there'll be 2 to 10 typically international travelers that will arrive in not Dallas or Denver or LAX, but Durango, and hang out in the departure hold rooms for 2 hours before they can catch their connecting flight to Chicago O'Hare. I don't think that we've ever seen that before. So
It was the bartender that figured this out.
yeah, we get the direct report from our concessionaire. They tend to go make a beeline for the bar and add to some of the concessionaire revenues, and he likes it a lot.
Yeah, sure.
Great.
Well, that's
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tony.
All right, I'm going to move on to the review of the consent agenda. This consent agenda is intended to allow the City Council by a single motion to approve items that are routine or non-controversial. There will be no separate discussion of these items on the agenda unless a councilor requests that an item be removed from the agenda. And if an item is removed from the consent agenda, it will be considered under item number 7. May we have a review, please?
Item 5.1 is approval of the minutes for the special study session of July 16, 2019. 5.2 is approval of the minutes for the study session of July 23, 2019. Items 5.3 through 5.6 are discussion and possible action items. 5.3 concerns the submission of a Colorado Department of Local Affairs gray and black market marijuana enforcement grant program application. 5.4 concerns Resolution R 2019-31 authorizing additional appropriation to the general fund and to the capital projects fund for work associated with the public improvement agreement. 5.5 concerns Resolution R 2019-32 establishing community greenhouse gas emissions and renewable energy goals. 5.6 concerns a letter of inquiry for funding through the Department of Local Affairs Renewable and Clean Energy Challenge Grant Program. Items 5.7 and 5.8 are final approval of ordinances. 5.7 is Ordinance O 2019-18, amending Chapter 19, Article 3 of the City of Durango Code of Ordinances to create the position of Police Service Technician and to grant authority to appointed Police Service Technician to enforce the city municipal code and declaring an effective date. And 5.8 is Ordinance O 2019-19, approving the annexation and initial zoning for the 821 addition to the City of Durango and declaring an effective date.
Thank you. Do we have any counselor that would like to remove an item from the consent agenda tonight?
5.5, please, and piggyback with that 5.6.
Anything else?
5.5, 5.6.
Do we have
5.4?
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda items withstanding the removal of items 5.4, 5.5, and 5.6?
I'll make the motion to approve the consent agenda with the removal of those items.
I'll second.
Councilor Baxter?
Yes.
Councilor Bettine?
Yes.
Councilor Noseworthy?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brookie?
Yes.
Mayor Youssef?
Yes. Okay, Counselor 5.4, discussion, please.
So I think it's just really exciting that the Escalante Drive has been expanded and everything's growing over there. But I did have a question about this, about the documentation or the last sentence on the documentation for this funding for additional appropriation to the general fund. it says the remaining $80,000 approximately necessary to satisfy the balance of the storm drain commitment will be paid for with city funds previously appropriated for the storm drainage costs in a capital project. And I didn't quite understand what that meant. So what capital project were they previously appropriated for, or how does that work?
Kevin Hall, Assistant City Manager. Good evening, councilors. So the cost on the storm drainage was estimated essentially before there was, the full project was designed and the costs were determined by the contractor. The city did not bid this project out. It was built by the developer of the Rocket Point Apartments. So we worked with them knowing that the storm drainage that was necessary was a larger issue than just that Rocket Point Apartments. So we appropriated in, I want to say it was 2017, I want to say, $150,000 anticipating those costs built into there somewhere. Once we got through the development of the project and the expenditures necessary with essentially the property owners paying for the project through reimbursement agreements, there was still these funds left from the one property owner. So we're applying them to the storm drainage because those dollars can only be used for the construction project on the road, rather than using appropriated dollars that the city had set aside in anticipation of some level of commitment and cost on the storm drain. So what we're doing is we're using up all the funds that the property owners who made a commitment towards construction of the project, making sure we're using all those funds up before we tap into the city general funds that were appropriated. So anything that's left after we're all said and done will go swept back out of what was appropriated back into the general fund.
Wonderful, thank you.
Sure.
Great. Councilors 5.5?
Basically, I just wanted to thank those folks that were circulating a petition and made eloquent demands 2 weeks ago this evening. And I think in the mayor's meeting, we were talking about how fast we might be able to act on this, and we just did it. And thought that would be a good council responsibility and something timely. I think when I saw Kirby out at the farmer's market on Saturday morning in the heat, still trying to get petition signatures, I thought maybe by next Saturday we can help him out and do something.
Save him some time.
Save him some time. So that's when earlier this last week we decided to go ahead and make this in the form of a resolution. So with that, very excited to look at it for the first time this evening. The actual wording of it, we gave staff direction. It's come back to us tonight for conversation, and now we'll talk about it.
I'd also like to add a few comments. First of all, I want to thank the staff for the quick turnaround. I mean,
Absolutely.
very quick. Thank you. And I want to recognize the incredible community of Durango and the great outside of Durango. 1,000 people, over 100 businesses coming together. And there's a real community pride in joining so many other communities in setting these goals. So I want to thank the tireless efforts on the part of people and nonprofits. I also want to add that our responsibility now, once we've set the goal, is actually to set, working with staff, to have key performance indicators and targets that we can actually work to achieve that goal, so it doesn't just sit on a shelf. And that will also require that we set aside appropriate funding for that. So I think I want to recognize that setting a goal is a great first step, and now we have to work with all of us to work to achieve that. So thank you, and thank the staff as well, and my fellow counselors.
Should we talk about 5. Do we need to act on this now? Or
I was
can we
going to
talk-
just do them all at once at the end.
They kind of piggyback, as you can see, as Barbara mentioned, funding, and staff has also been active in looking at and exploring funding mechanisms to help us out with the goals that we're setting in 5.4.
And item 5.6 is a discussion about the grant application from Dole, right?
Exactly, yeah. And that's what, 5.6 is what I was referring to, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Can we get a little explanation on that? I didn't mean to put you on the spot. But,
Happy to do that. So when we talked 2 weeks ago, Imogen presented an overview of some of the primary big projects that are going on with the sustainability program, and one of them was an energy audit we have underway right now to determine some of the best bang for your buck, if you will, projects that we can do to increase our energy efficiency and reduce our utility costs. Once the audit is done, we have the opportunity to move to what's called an energy performance contract, which essentially uses the cost savings, the guaranteed savings on the utility, reduction in utility costs to pay down the debt on the improvements. So it just so happens, and coincidentally, that Department of Local Affairs has started a new program that really dovetails it with exactly what we're doing right now. And in fact, they encouraged us to submit a letter of inquiry, kind of sharing with them what we have in mind and what we're looking at for work program for next year. If, in fact, we have a $2 million project identified through the audit, we can apply for up to $1 million, and the letter of inquiry really speaks to that. So what that really allows us to do is further leverage those cost savings through either additional improvement projects that will pencil, or you could also buy down the term of the payback, essentially, through that cost savings. So that program is there. It would be a very appropriate thing for us to submit it. The letter of inquiry does not get us to a grant application. We have to make our case. If we are invited to submit an application, that would be due in early December, I believe. And at that point, we would have more details relative to what it is, because I recognize what we provided in the agenda pack gave you kind of a broad overview. Wasn't the very specific things that would be in the project, but we have a few months to really queue this up. So that's what the intention is here.
Excellent.
I have a question on it as well. My main comment is, that's wonderful, thank you. If that grant is not funded, or if it's delayed in some way, I guess I also wanted to make the comment that we would need a plan to also have an appropriated funds to actually start doing some work. And I think that part of the issue is that the challenge may be that appropriating funds and not quite having the energy audit come back, so we know what to do.
So right now, the way the program is set up is we have a fixed amount of revenue coming in from the sustainability fee that would cover capital projects. That is typically appropriated through the budget process. We won't have a specific project identified with that, and primarily relative to what we're talking about here is the energy performance contract doesn't have an upfront cost. We may very well pay for the audit with available funds that we already have appropriated, but when it comes to the performance contract, everything rolls in through the program. And I just want to point out that the state of Colorado oversees this type of contracting with all communities, and there's been many communities in the state of Colorado, as well as across the nation, that have used this approach. So the upfront cost, there is none. It rolls into the cost over time through the guarantee of the savings on the utility bills.
Thank you, but there might also be other areas like converting the fleet, things like that, that would need to have a key performance indicator and issues. So I guess I'm just saying that I'm looking to see those targets coming back and what might be necessary as far as the funding.
The Sustainability Action Plan we discussed 2 weeks ago, in terms of getting that updated, I think with the greenhouse gas inventory, with this energy audit effort, some of the other things with the municipal evaluation we just did, all those things come together to really give us our second generation plan going into 2020. Obviously there's capacity issues, but I think we have some significant momentum towards continuing moving towards the goals that maybe I'm going to assume that will be adopted tonight. At any rate, I think we're heading in the right direction, and certainly we'll keep you updated as we move forward.
Great, thank you so much.
Thanks, Kevin. I didn't mean to put you on the spot on that grant funding, but that's a potential $1 million for specifically fleet conversion was one of the tag items on that that would expedite that kind of a thing. But as you know, I wouldn't have recommended taking on this challenge had not we completed so many of the steps already necessary to get there, and made other commitments as well. So. On relative to 5.5, I think we're well on our way with the appropriations we have in place for the next year.
And you will keep us posted on that status of the grant application? Great, thank you. And I just wanted to suggest then, before we close, that I wanted to echo my counselor's sentiments that, we heard loud and clear from our community come up and speak about clean air. And this was democracy at its finest. We listened, and we are responding. And it's really great to see, and I think that as a council, we recognize that everyone participating in these type of initiatives where it's important to have the groundswell from the bottom up, we recognize that importance. We also recognize that we lead by example, and we also recognize that as local action is absolutely necessary with regards to sustainability initiatives, because we are uniquely positioned to advance initiatives with regards to transportation and buildings, and in some cases renewable energy. So I just wanted to thank my counselors. This is the second opportunity hopefully will soon have to participate in sustainability action goals as a counselor. The first was with the adoption of the 2015 energy efficiency codes, and the second time might be this. So it's exciting, and I wanted to thank our counselors for that. It's good work. And with that, I think I'll look for a motion to approve items 5.4, 5.6, and 5.4, 5.5, and 5.6.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Phillips, may we have a roll call?
Counselor Bettine?
Yes.
Counselor Noseworthy?
Yes.
Counselor Baxter?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brooking?
Yes.
Mayor Youssef?
Yes. Moving on to public participation. This section of the agenda is set aside for the public to provide comments or ask questions for items that are not otherwise on the agenda. When I call you forward, if you would please join us at the podium, state your name and address clearly for the record. We are limiting comments to 3 minutes. At 2.5 minutes, our city manager will kindly wave his hand and let you know that your time is almost up. We don't mean to be distracting, but we're trying to run efficient meetings. We don't normally comment for the dais, but we may comment briefly or follow up with written comments. And with that, can we please have Kirby McLaurin, please? I always get challenged having to say everyone's first and last names.
I do too, Michael. So, good evening. I'm Kirby McLaurin, city resident at 288 Animas View Drive. I really appreciate the efforts that you all do. I was going to come up here and say, I know how hard it is to be a city councilor, but the fact is I don't. There's so much of your great effort that happens behind the scenes. I do witness your dedication, your diligence to provide great service to the community, so thank you. As written, my note said, I understand that this week the council is considering taking a huge step forward by committing to concrete climate goals, thereby joining 133 communities nationwide that have done so. I see that you just voted. I'll go ahead and speak anyway on that matter, 5.5. I'm here to applaud and thank you and encourage you to embrace this path with vigor. Climate change mitigation is actually an enterprise in which we get bonus points for arriving or finishing early. We get 0 points for finishing late. I am sincere in my thanks, so I don't mean to seem unappreciative when I say that the city needs to step up more fully than it would if it adopted 5.5. 1,600 residents and 120 businesses have urged you to commit to substantially more aggressive goals that are included in 5.5, and more will do so these coming months. The offered resolution includes greenhouse gas emission goals that fall short of even LPA's goals by 20%. I'm wondering why is that? The renewable energy goal addresses electricity only, 100% renewable electricity by 2050. The petition asks for 100% renewable energy by 2050, which would include heating and transportation. Quite substantial difference. So no goals for those sectors even until 2050. So how does that begin to address building EVs into our fleet, for example? I feel strongly that climate change is on our doorstep and half measures are unacceptable. Each one of us must take that stance if we are to look our children in the eye and support them to a full and hopeful life. I urge you to seek the high road, the high path of early rapid adoption of locally produced clean energy. That was something else left out of 5.5, locally produced, which would really support a local economy. So I urge you to not only set KPIs for each department, but concrete projects that will ensure the installation of solar beginning next year before the expiration of federal tax rebates, which could spell cheaper prices for the city. So I know funding's a problem, but let's be creative, educate our community, and come up with the money. You are up to the task, and so are we. So I applaud your efforts and urge it forward. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Perry Regal, please.
I would like to applaud the city.
If you could say your name and address for the
Perry
record.
Regal, 543 East 30th Street.
Thank you.
I would like to applaud the councilors for their efforts. I think it's great. We've worked a long time for this, and I'm glad that you approved that. I would like to quote Greta Thunberg. She's the Swedish, the young woman that addressed the UN. And several weeks ago, she addressed the French National Assembly in Paris. And I'd like to read part of what she said. I believe that the biggest damage is not our inaction. The real danger is when companies and politicians are making it look like real action is happening, when in fact almost nothing is being done, excuse me, apart from clever accounting and creative PR. And I think that may be what's happening with the resolution that you just passed. The two of the councilmen, Melissa and Barbara, both mentioned transportation. As our resolution that we put forward last week, or 2 weeks ago, it stated it included all energy. That has been changed to all electricity. So transportation has been taken out of the resolution. So I think I think we can do better. You know, Durango can do better. We need to set our goals a little bit higher, and I think we can achieve those from what the 5.5 has in there. So anyway, again, thank you very much for your time, and thanks for passing it.
Thank you very much. Katie Pellicure.
My name is Katie Pellicor, and I work at San Juan Citizens Alliance. We're located at 1309 East 3rd Avenue in Durango. And San Juan Citizens Alliance advocates for clean air, pure water, and healthy lands, the foundations of resilient communities, ecosystems, and economies here in the San Juan Basin. So I'm just here to thank you for listening to us, everyone who came out 2 weeks ago and spoke in favor of a bold new renewable energy goal, and we appreciate you hearing us and for your quick action, and thank you also to the staff for working so hard on that. And thanks for passing the resolution. I would echo that I think it would be good to slightly amend it to include energy and not just electricity, so it's a broader goal that encompasses a little bit more of that transportation sector, like the previous comment had said, and also to add in a milestone goal about local generation, which is an important piece for bolstering our local economy, like we originally put forth in our 100% renewable energy petition, which, as Kirby mentioned, does have over 1,600 signatures and 121 local business signatures. But we're excited that you passed a bold goal to help guide your policy, and we're excited to see it reflect in the budget. So thank you for your work, and thank you for being proactive about it.
Thank you. Kate Stalin and Kathy Wilson.
Hello, I'm Kate Stalin, and this is Kathy Wilson. We're with Durango Youth Soccer Association, which is located on 862 Main Avenue here in Durango. DYSA is now doing business as Rio Rapids Durango Soccer Club. Last September, we aligned with the Rio Rapids Soccer Club out of Albuquerque and the Colorado Rapids, which is the Major League Soccer team in Denver. DYSA was founded in 1993, and we service about 350 members a year. Tonight, we're here to talk about our Durango Shootout Soccer Tournament and the positive impact it has on our community. So I'm going to pass it over to Kathy, who is our tournament director.
Hi. So we just wanted to share with you tonight, we had an economic impact study done by the Fort Lewis College Department of Economics. Deborah Walker, the professor of economics, conducted the study with a group of students. And we were very pleasantly surprised at the impact that the tournament actually has on the Durango community. And a lot of people know that there's kids in town over Mother's Day weekend every year. This is our 24th year of the tournament. So people know that there's a lot of kids in town and running around, but unless you're a hotel owner, you don't necessarily know how we do impact our town. But I just wanted to share with you guys a little bit about the tournament. So we have 150 teams that participate, and they come from 4 states: Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, and Utah. We have about 2,200 players in town, 5,000 spectators, 85 referees, 300 plus volunteers, 9 staff members, 5 venues that we use in town, 19 fields, and 250 games that we play over a 3-day period. So it's a big production. So when they did the analysis for us, they took into account all non-local attendees who are in Durango specifically for the tournament, and they analyzed it with how many, looking at the non-local amounts, how they spent their money and how much they spent. And in the end, it comes up that they estimated about $245 per person was spent. And with that, $2.3 million in new economic activity for Durango over the course of the weekend. And of that, $52,000 in new sales tax and $11,000 in lodging tax revenue. So once again, we just wanted to share that with you. Oh, thank you. And then one of the other things that we found that was really interesting was, one of the questions was, will you return to Durango? And 74% said absolutely they would return for vacation. So we would like you to support us as we approach our Parks and Rec department, and we're going to just ask them if they will donate the fields for us for the weekend. We only spend $700 to $800 for those fields. However, that is 2 full scholarships for us, and we spend $25,000 a year in scholarships for our players. So, thank you.
Thanks for being concise. Yeah, that's
Thank you for
awesome.
the support.
The number I heard, 2.3 million, right?
That's what I got.
That's awesome.
That's great. David Mueller, please.
Thank you. My name is David Moeller. I live at 72 Trestle Lane, Durango, Colorado. That's right.
Sorry.
It's my handwriting. I just want to tell a little story. I went to a Parks and Rec Advisory Board meeting back in March. If you guys haven't, please take a listen to that, about minute 47 till about an hour, 47 minutes and then to an hour and 25 minutes. You'll hear a really good conversation about that Parks and Rec Advisory Board kind of concerns with a current project that's already been green lighted, and that is the crossing at 32nd Street to connect into Oxbow. So the expansion of the River Trail pedestrian bridge with a crossing that goes over. And it talks about maybe what was the political climate really then? We didn't know we had an election coming up. Was 1A going to happen? 416 fire. Is this the right spend today? And I can appreciate taking that gut check back in March and really understanding, hey, what needs to happen right now? Fast forward, 1A passed. We know where the election, where we're at today, and we have a project that's currently still on hold that has grant monies assigned to it. About a little over $400,000 worth of GOCO money that has been assigned to this, and it seems like a real amenity to be able to connect Oxbow all the way down to, River Road past Escalante. And then at some point be able to have a crossing at Escalante, and at some point be able to have a crossing into the downtown corridor. And I really want to just express that I don't think that this is an and, or I'm sorry, it's an or. Should we do this project, or should we do a crossing at Camino? I really see this as being an and it's a yes in my book. I think it really needs to be. I think the board at Park, and by the way, I expressed this to the board last week. I went to their advisory meeting. And so one of the things that I really struggle with, so putting on my commercial rafting hat, is my bus is 40 feet long. I put a trailer on, it's 18 feet long. I'm 60 feet out. We time our rafting trips to intentionally not be there when the train goes by. And so I have the ability, and in the unfortunate event when the train is going by, I can back traffic up unintentionally to the turning lane in front of City Market with 2 of my buses, and I'm just one commercial rafting company. There's 7 of us out there. So either we change the route to get to the river access point in the event of an at-grade crossing. I just don't think that's the way to go. If we as citizens, okay, we're gonna save $1 million, that's a lot of money. I mean, don't get me wrong, that's a lot of money, that's a lot of other projects. But I really think that you can't really put a price tag on this type of safety. I mean, 32nd Street is, my understanding, is the 3rd busiest intersection or street that the city owns. And to me, this is a no-brainer. I mean, this is really something, it took a lot of community involvement to rank this project as high as it did. And it's taken us today to kind of take a step back and gut check and say, is this the right spend today? And here we are. We have a great funding mechanism for Parks and Rec. We didn't see any of their improvements on the general fund because the funding mechanism is there. The money's there. And so I really just want to think about what a gem it would be to market our river trail from Oxbow to Escalante, and how easy that would be able to do. Durango has kind of struggled with an identity crisis over the years. Are we rafting? Are we jeeping? Are we biking? Are we hiking? Are we mountain? And then to be able to focus in on this type of amenity, we will get our return back on the investment of the spend to do the overgrade crossing, not an at-grade, but an overpass crossing to be able to market this river trail and what it's been designed to be. And then I'll be continuing to advocate for, and we'll be able to look at that project and say, what a great idea for Camino, or what a great idea for connecting all the way into Three Springs. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
City Manager, Madam Mayor, Council.
Thank you very much. Monique DeGiorgio, please.
Good evening, councilors. My name is Monique DeGiorgio. I'm the Managing Director of Local First. Our office is at 1309 East 3rd Ave. And it's my pleasure to be here tonight to thank you for adopting Resolution 5.5. Local First is the voice of the local independent business community, and we've been working with you for 2 years to adopt this resolution. And we represent the 120 businesses that are going to applaud your action tonight. And I'd also like to thank you for both setting not only renewable energy and electricity goals, but greenhouse gas emission reduction goals. And similar to my partners that also said they would like to see maybe some specificity around transportation, as well as some local renewable energy goals, that would be great. And it sounds like we'll have an opportunity to work with you on funding, performance indicators, and targets. So we look forward to entering into that discussion, and thank you so much. I'm going to take that hat off and put a different hat on, which is as co-owner of Table to Farm Compost, which, as you probably all know, is the only curbside compost service in Durango. Thanks to all of you, you provide us a special use permit so that we can do that. And I wanted to remind you that by doing that, you are actually helping to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and you're meeting some of those goals. And I see that puzzled look on Councilor Brookie's face. How does that work? So I will tell you that when you put organic food scraps into a covered landfill, you're creating basically methane, which is 40 times more potent than carbon dioxide. And so when we divert that waste and actually put it into a compost pile, we're not only creating, let's say, an artisan soil for this community to grow food, but we're also reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So we've had the pleasure of working with Kevin and Imogen and your staff to keep that service going. We have 300 customers, and I wanted to give you what I think are the metrics since we started 3 years ago, which is that we have diverted about 119 tons of organic food waste, and that's about 104 metric tons of carbon dioxide emissions diverted. And I know that's a small snapshot of your full greenhouse gas emission goals, but I think it's an important one. And we look forward to working with Imogen and Kevin to actually look at some additional data and help grow the business so that we can really help you achieve those goals. So thank you for your support.
Thank you. All right, that's all for public participation unless there's anybody else. Okay, moving on to our public hearings. Yes. Great. Thank you all. We have one legislative and policy related hearing tonight and 3 judicial hearings. Please note that these hearings are an opportunity for the community and citizens to provide formal input into the council's decision-making process. The format is intentionally organized to ensure transparency and fairness for all parties involved. We welcome all public testimony for our public hearings, but we do ask that it be relevant to the issue at hand, and please sign in with your name and address on the forms below. We do limit comments to 3 minutes. Moving on to item 9.1, legislative and policy relating hearing. This is a hearing to consider an ordinance amending certain chapters and sections of the Code of Ordinances to amend the maximum penalties to be imposed by the municipal court for municipal ordinance violations to comply with recent changes to state law and to provide consistency within the code. All right, with that, we will hear from staff, please.
Yes, this item comes out of some recent action by the legislature to change the maximum penalties that are allowed in municipal court. Previously, the maximum penalty was allowed up to 1 year and for a fine of $2,650. Don't ask me why that's the number, but it is, and has been for quite some time. The legislature found that the 1-year penalty triggered some immigration status issues that could cause some people who were convicted of an action in municipal court, that level was triggering some issues with immigration items. So the legislature reduced the maximum penalty from 1 year to 364 days. So the initial proposal was to make that change in our code. This is consistent with the advisements and the activities that are currently happening in municipal court, but this is just an action to formalize that. And then we were going through the process of looking at the maximum penalties set forth in the code. We discovered that there were a variety of places where the penalties were inconsistent. So the suggestion is that we take action to make all of those maximum penalties equivalent in the code. Again, those are maximums. The court then can use its discretion to apply to the actual penalties. Obviously, a fine of that size and a jail sentence of that length is incredibly rare. In fact, I'm not sure that it ever happens, but so this is just more than anything else an administrative process to make our penalties in the municipal court consistent with state law.
Great,
uniformly. Yeah.
We don't have any do we have public testimony for this one?
We do not.
Okay, any questions from council?
I'm just curious if any of the penalties were actually increased in their maximum. Everything went down?
No, there will be some that were actually increased. There were some that had a maximum penalty of 90 days and $1,000, so they will all be raised so that they're all consistent. That's the idea. And some of them are just dated. They were done in the 60s and were never updated. So some of them actually probably will increase. But again, those are maximums. They're certainly not mandatory sentences in any way.
You might note this is kind of trickle-down law and how municipal, how a small town like Durango is impacted by what happens at the State House. And so it's important for us to keep up, and I think our staff is bringing us tonight in really on-time performance, actually. We're responding faster than I think most communities have been able to do to this type of legislation. So it seems pretty basic.
Any further discussion from council? Do I have a motion? To approve item 9.2.1.
I'll make a motion to approve item 9.1.1.
Oh, thank you. 9.1.1. Thank you, yes.
Second.
Further discussion? May we have a roll call?
Counselor Noseworthy?
Yes.
Counselor Baxter?
Yes.
Counselor Patine?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brookie?
Yes.
Mayor Youssef?
Yes. Moving on to our quasi-judicial hearings. Quasi-judicial hearings regarding a legal process in which counsel is presented with facts and opinions, and we serve as unbiased decision makers. The applicant has the burden of proof in these proceedings and must present testimony or evidence to support the request. With these proceedings tonight, we're going to start with the presentation from staff. We will have a presentation by the applicant or developer, any public testimony. I will close the public testimony, then we will have questions from council at that time. We'll have a response from city staff, response from the applicant and developer, and we'll close the public hearing. With that, we will go to item 9.2.1, which is a continuation. So I don't believe we need to do anything with this one, correct, Dirk?
That's right. It's continued to the 3rd of September.
Continue to the 3rd of September. So moving on to 9.2.2, a public hearing to consider a preliminary minor subdivision for Twin Buttes Phase 1, filing 1B, Lot 71.
Thank you, Mark Williams, Community Development. So we are looking at a minor preliminary subdivision, minor because it's creating less than 6 lots. And before I get into the specifics of this subdivision, I want to give you, council, some background on what's going on in Twin Buttes, because we are seeing a strong demand for subdivisions and smaller lots. So at the staff level, we're starting to look at how do we make the process more efficient so that we're not having to do subdivision public hearings every time this happens, because it's basically a greenfield development where they're in the initial stage of development, and it feels like it's unnecessarily time-consuming and complicated to have to do this for a small 2-lot subdivision. So staff's working with Twin Buttes, and we should be back end of this year, maybe next year, with a lot of revisions to their master plan documents. But to give you some background on Twin Buttes itself, the original approval started in 2008, went through 2011. A total of 655 housing units can be built there with an additional 135 ADUs. And we track the number of units that have been built there. There are specific standards to Twin Buttes because it's a planned development, so in a way it's its own animal, and for many standards they're unique to Twin Buttes as opposed to city standards, such as some of the street standards they have. They also have a design review committee that approves any house before it gets a building permit or even comes to the city for review. They're also very careful with the drainage. There's a lot of topography and crazy drainage ways that go through Twin Buttes, so everything that's built creates impervious surface. We track that on a lot-by-lot basis. So as I said earlier, we're working with Twin Buttes itself to start revising the master plans out there to help them do what they need to do, which is to reflect current market demand, which is generally for smaller lots and smaller houses. Most of the houses and lots, or most of the lots out there, are in the range of 15 to 20,000 square feet, but they're seeing a demand for products that are closer to what's in town, 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 square feet. And so that applies to this as well. This is the lot that's in question, lot 71. This is Highway 160. And this is the same map, just with the aerial photograph grayed out and the lots that have been platted so far shown, so you can get a sense of the scale of what's happening out there. The size of this lot is pretty consistent with most of the lots that have been platted. And this is the 1B area, by the way. 1A was the first place to be platted, and it's down here, and there are already quite a few houses and townhomes that have been built in 1A. This is the subdivision itself. So from a lot of around 14,000 square feet, there'll be 2 new lots, one of about 7,500, one of about 6,500 square feet. The northern lot will take access directly off the main street here, and the smaller house with the bigger lot will take access from Arnica Court, which is actually not a public street, it's a private driveway that will serve this lot, potentially another lot behind these 2 lots if they're ever built. So the driveway is off Arnica Court, and then the driveway is off Tipple. We're not approving the design of the houses here, but they have already largely designed the houses that they want to build, so I thought it would be a good idea to give you an example of what's going on at Twin Buttes. This is the southern house on the larger lot, but a little bit of a smaller house. This is the driveway I was just talking about, and the parking is behind the house over here. And this is the larger house. It's about 2,100 square feet on a 6,500 square foot lot. So you can see they're not tiny homes, but they're definitely not massive. So they're pretty consistent with what's going on in a lot of Durango. There's a large drainage easement behind the lots, and we're making sure that's not disturbed. As I mentioned before, the lots are 7,500, 6,500 square feet. Twin Buttes itself does not have detailed subdivision standards. That's one of the things we're working on. But we do want these lots to have 50 feet of street frontage and adequate access, which they both do. And as I mentioned, the Twin Buttes DRC looked at these 2 houses and they have approved them. And as always, after an approval by City Council, applicants are required to submit the subdivision plat for a more detailed review. This is fairly straightforward, so really the only sometimes not standard condition of approval is that the applicants will have to give the city a public improvements agreement. Whenever a developer works in public property, they have to give the city a bond or a letter of credit to ensure that that work is covered in case they go bankrupt or there's some kind of issue, and that's the case here. So the staff recommendation is to approve the Twin Buttes Phase 1, Filing 1B, Lot 71. Preliminary minor subdivision, direct the applicant to prepare the final plat and Mylars, and authorize the mayor to sign the final plat Mylars once all necessary revisions are made.
Thank you. Do we have a presentation from the applicant or developer?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Mark, after he's done, could you put the proposal at the...
Staff recommendation?
Yeah, the staff recommendation back up so that when you want to do a...
Oh, after he's done?
Yeah.
Okay.
When we want to make a motion.
Leave a pretty picture up there for me.
Good evening. My name is Todd Slater. I live at 5 Pine Tree Way here in Durango. I will be one of the owners and builders of the lot. My building partner on this couldn't make it tonight. He unfortunately had an out-of-state funeral he had to go to, so he would have if he could have. Real quick, just a little background on us. We're not large-scale builders. We may do 1 home a year or so. And in selecting these projects, we're trying to create something that we think benefits the community and the specific development that we're working in, Twin Buttes in this case. And we think these homes, as Mark showed it, designed, do that very well and would provide a high-quality, efficient, and modern-day product at a price point that we think will be attainable for the Durango community, which is a large goal here, is to build a smaller home at a more attainable price point, which is why we've taken this route in trying to subdivide the lot. Both these homes will be built to a higher standard than the 2015 Energy Code recently adopted. One of the homes will have a full PV solar system and be net zero, if not very close to it. Other home will also be very energy efficient and will be set up for a potential future solar system. We chose lot 71 for several reasons. It has a flat building envelope. Almost all the native landscape will remain undisturbed. We don't need any variances as far as setbacks, and actually have a very comfortable distance between the two homes. And it's ideal access, as Mark pointed out, being a corner lot and having two separate driveway cuts. Lot 71 was also originally a duplex eligible lot, meaning in the original planning and development of the lot, it was designed for two dwellings. So it has in place two sewer taps, two water taps, and was permitted for two driveways. So it was ready to go, ready to be built on as a duplex lot. But with the recent addition of condos and townhomes to the area and to the market, we feel like there's still a need and a value on smaller single-family homes, which again is why we have chosen this route. In trying to accomplish this over the past few months, we've put a great deal of time and resources working with the city's planning department, engineering department, and the Twin Buttes Design Review Committee to ensure that everyone's on the same page and happy with the design of this project. Specifically, we've already installed a new sewer tap that's more functional. We've moved both the water taps that were originally placed in incorrect positions, and we've created new plats and plans for the lot based on all the feedback and requests from these different entities. So at this point, we think this is a great opportunity for everyone involved, and we would love to see the project move forward.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Do we have any public testimony?
No.
Okay, closing the public testimony. Questions from council?
I got a couple questions for Mark. Well, one, I think it's really important to note that as the owner referenced, this was originally a duplex eligible lot. So in fact, the density is the same. It's just a different configuration with the property line. So so he's got two single family ownerships, but no more units than was originally approved. Which brings me back to just a kind of overall Twin Buttes thing. The 655 units originally approved, plus the ADUs. In this thinking of we've seen a number of these divisions, are they at some point going to want to increase that number?
I don't think we're to that point yet, but that's a subject that's come up. If the lots are half the size they are now, what's going to happen? I do think because of the absorption rate, we have a long time to think about it. They built 26, they've gotten 26 building permits so far. But that is something that we'll have to ponder, yeah.
I think what I've seen up there is, in general, people are building closer together, wanting smaller homes and smaller lots, as you referenced, and the ultimate success is there's less, there's more open space and more trees between units, even though there's a lot of trees being taken down. But I think until that point, and when the developer says, I want to build more than 655 units, it's a good thing. I think in terms of what's the number of units, lots that have been split to achieve the same density, just a better configuration is what I see happening.
Yeah. I think at some point in the future, as part of this process, or maybe a process at some point down the road, we'll have to reevaluate the engineering impact, the water and the sewer and the transportation, because that was based on the 655 units, but that's something that can happen.
And one last thing, in terms of the process that you described, in terms of streamlining this process, perhaps in the future, is that something you're prepared to talk to us about another time, soon, or is that the applicant, Twin Buttes, will come in?
That was really just us laying the groundwork for coming back in the future, and we'll probably bring this up a few more times. So there are a lot of large, dense documents to work through: the development agreement, the preliminary plan. We're creating a codes and standards book, and so we're not there yet. We're still in the development agreement, which is the first document we've tackled. So it's going to be a few months before we get to that point.
My input, it sounded like a good idea. Is what I can offer now.
Thanks.
Further questions from council?
I just have a comment. I just want to applaud the planning department for the foresight and looking at that plan and reacting to the market forces at play. I heard a compliment from a banker in another meeting I was in earlier today about planning and about how the willingness of planning to really work and streamline a process that he was involved in. He didn't mention where it was. I don't know where it was specifically, but planning gets some heat sometimes for their process, that you guys did such a good job, and it's great to see both of those things in one day come to fruition. So thank you.
Anything else? Any further comments from staff or the applicant? Okay. Can I seek a motion from City Council?
Can we see the motion again?
Oh, yes, now we need staff recommendations,
It
please.
just makes it so much easier.
I make a motion, wrong one. Go ahead. Motion to approve the Twin Buttes Phase 1 filing 1B Lot 71 preliminary minor subdivision, and direct the applicant to prepare the final plat and Mylars, and authorize the Mylar mayor to sign the final plat once all necessary revisions are made.
I will second.
Ms. Phillips? Any further discussion? Ms. Phillips? May we have a roll call?
Counselor Bettine?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Berkey?
Yes.
Counselor Baxter?
Yes.
Counselor Noseworthy?
Yes.
Mayor Youssef?
Yes. Moving on to item 9.2.3, a public hearing to consider a final plat subdivision for 1201 Main Avenue.
Okay, so we're switching scales here. This is 1201 just down the street. There are 2 units in 1201 Main that are currently used as offices, and the proposal is to convert them to residential units. This is probably the smallest subdivision I have ever or ever will work on. It's about 6 square feet, and I'll show you a copy of why that's 6 square feet in a second. But it's a moving of a property line, so we do have to go through a public hearing process because the unit's being moved into the general common element from the private ownership of the unit. The condo association has approved the use change, and they sent us a communication to that effect.
Mark, I apologize. I just realized that in reading one of the names on here that I may have a conflict, so it would now be the time to mention that. I'll remove myself, recuse myself from any vote.
There's a parking standard. When 1201 was created, they paid some in lieu fees, and they have a lot of shared use parking arrangements in the building itself. And when you go from a commercial use to residential use, you've got to make sure there's enough parking. They have enough parking. They're required to have 1.5 spaces per unit, and they've got 4 total. They have 1 permanent space for each of these 2 units plus 1 overnight space. So they meet the parking requirement, and the condo association approved it. This also meets LUDC standards, and there are a couple of other standards it would need to meet. One is building code for egress, and I'll show you that in a second. It does meet the building code standard. Also the fire code, the sprinkling system has to be changed from a commercial system to a residential system, and they'll have to do that as part of this process before they get a certificate of occupancy. And as always, staff will perform another review of the plat before asking for Mylars. So this is actually a blow up of the plat, but it's still too big. So the unit is 205 and 204. The reason this is a subdivision is that this is being squared off, and this is the main entrance into the office. The main entrance into the unit will now be right here, and our code has a requirement that in a mixed-use building, if residential is on the same floor as commercial, the entrance to the residential has to be behind a locking door. So this is a locking door that the residents back behind the door have access to, and then the main entrance into this unit. So this unit functions separately. The applicants will add a door, and this will basically be just absorbed into the existing unit and function as a guest bedroom when they have family or friends visiting. This door is not going to go away. This is the main entrance into Unit 204, but it'll become a crash door that's not accessible from the outside. It's only an exit with a crash bar, so you can get out into this area. And The reason for that is there's no direct egress through a window. This is overlooking the entrance into the building, and it's a double height entrance, so it's sort of a mezzanine level, which obviously wouldn't work if you were trying to jump out of the window for some reason. This is a picture of the parking plan that was recently updated by the Condo Association. It shows the 4 units for the applicant. And it's pretty straightforward. The recommended action is to approve the 1201 Main Avenue subdivision and direct the applicant to make any necessary final plat revisions to prepare the Mylars and authorize the mayor to sign the final plat Mylars once all necessary revisions are made.
Great, thank you. Do we have any presentation from the applicant or developer?
Good evening, I'm the applicant. My name is David Tyler. I am a future Durango resident, but currently a resident of Centennial, Colorado. I'd like to thank Mark and the staff for helping us navigate this process, because it was a bit of a head scratcher to figure out how to convert from commercial back to residential, even though one of the units was originally residential. It's our intention to complete this process and then renovate the unit and make it a retirement home, although in the near term, our son is in Fort Lewis, will be the most spoiled student at Fort Lewis because he'll get to live on Main Avenue. But other than that, I said HOA has approved the conditions of this. In fact, this is sort of the trend inside the building. The second floor is now down to, I think, really the physician's office is the last thing on that floor that's commercial. Everything else is over 10 years converted to residential. So I think they're finding that there's more demand for residential and commercial in that facility. Other than that, I'm open to questions.
Thank you. Do we have any public testimony?
No.
No, okay. Close the public testimony. Questions from council?
Is this a possible Airbnb type of rental situation?
I talked about with the applicant, Mr. Tyler, about that, and he said he did not want to rent it as a vacation rental. If you wanted to add that as a condition of approval, that'd be appropriate.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say we certainly wouldn't take that off the table. Then who knows what happens down the road, but in the near term, that is not the plan. So I don't know what to, I mean, obviously, if we decide to go to short-term rental, we'd have to go back through the short-term rental licensing process and all of that. So there would be plenty of oversight at that time. But right now, we're just trying to get through the conversion so we can actually do construction.
Do the covenants, do the HOA covenants allow for vacation rentals?
Yeah, I think there are 2 that are semi-functional.
Well,
right, and there have been more in the past, but yeah, they're allowed.
There's 2 current licenses in there, although one's under foreclosure, so I don't know what's going on.
Is there any max of the licenses for that building, or is it just all of them could be vacation rentals?
I don't know if there's a maximum. I think, I don't know what the covenants say about vacation rentals in terms of the maximum number. Parking could be an issue. You'd have to have 2 full-time parking, well, 1 full-time parking space, which he has, if the smaller unit was a vacation rental. But we haven't thought about doing it as a vacation rental.
And I can speak to the covenants as I've been through them extensively, and they do not have an imposed limit on how many units can or can't be short-term rented. The majority of the units in that building right now are either owner-occupied or more than 30-day rental. But the covenants don't preclude short-term rental.
But the document does state, the project summary, that it will not be a vacation rental.
That was based on my understanding.
Yeah, I mean, at this point in time, that's not the plan. Now, like I said, I can't speak to 5 years from now. I mean, we've invested in the property. I don't know what will happen, but I assume at that point we would enter into we have to get a license and the whole thing would be reviewed. So I view that as a hurdle down the road.
So with this recommended action, would that then take into account your recommendation that there not be a vacation rental, or does this recommended action preclude that, or does it include that?
It says further review is what you said in your, I believe.
I think it's not a condition of approval.
It said right here, Unit 204 may not function as a separate unit without additional review process and approval by the city.
Okay. So this recommended action then would take that into account?
does cover that.
Okay.
I think that's appropriate, and you know, there are situations, I think, where it's not appropriate for us to approve a vacation rental, but this is really the home, what you got an established homeowners association. They've got their own covenants. You know, historically, it's been their deal, not ours, to make that determination, especially after the fact. So, but this, of course, is a boundary line adjustment, a newly created unit, so it comes into play. But I would suggest that that it remain as stated and not be a condition of approval, other than what's already stated.
Right, but by approving this recommended action, we are essentially saying that without further review, it would not be a vacation rental.
But further, any vacation rental requires further review, though. I mean, I think the further review is an application for a vacation rental if one were to desire it.
Correct.
And that's the further review. It's not that it's precluded in any specific way.
Right.
Further comments, questions from council?
I'll recommend approval of it's been a long day. 1201 Main Avenue subdivision, and direct the applicant to make any necessary final plat revisions, to prepare the Mylars, and authorize the mayor to sign the final plat Mylars once all necessary revisions are made.
Second. Nicely done.
Any further discussion? Ms. Stokes, may we have a roll call?
Mayor Pro Tem Berkey?
Yes.
Councilor Baxter?
Yes.
Councilor Noseworthy?
Yes.
Mayor Youssef?
Yes. Can someone please grab Councilor Bettine for us? Sure. Thanks. All right, moving on then to council reports and actions. Does any councilors have any reports and updates that they would like to share at this time?
Sure.
Great.
So and I'm just using a working title here, the Strategic and Finance and Committee.
Those guys.
Our working group of Barbara and Dean and I met on Wednesday and had a preliminary discussion about purposes, skills needed, questions that might be asked of the group. And we agreed that we were going to meet hopefully for 4 weeks in a row and then be able to come back with a proposal to City Council. And additionally, tomorrow, right? Yep, tomorrow at 12:15, we're meeting for our second meeting. And we've invited Rich Butler to join us, who is the chairman of the county's long-term finance committee, to talk with us about what works, what doesn't work, suggestions, what skills are needed, what skills might be missing, all those kind of ideas. So that's where we are with that. This was a short update.
Great. Can I ask you a question? Will you guys be talking about how applicants will be selected for this committee?
Not specifically, I mean, right now, that we may get to that, but in general, we're trying to come up with the types of skills that are needed, the skill sets to do the things we're asking for. And so then to be able to put that out into the community and say, hey, please, people with these kind of skills and interests, come and join us. And, that's the way we're looking at it right now.
I do recall when we were talking about this previously, prior to you guys, two new counselors coming on, Counselor, there were 3 individuals mentioned, and there were also 3 individuals that contacted us and suggested they were interested at some point, whenever it's appropriate.
Right.
And we to pass those on, or
yes, and we are still getting those kind of requests. So
okay, great.
Essentially, my thought was we'd make a list of everyone and make sure they were included in the request.
Great.
Yeah, it was a far-ranging discussion, from very specific to really, what is our community going to look like financially 20 years from now?
Yeah.
And what kind of issues are at play. So it was really fun.
We talked a lot about reserve balances and things that make our city resilient, in the sense of maintenance and operation reserves and what they might look like. So that's definitely one area of questions that we would propose.
Excellent.
And I'll thank my colleagues, and I also recognize that Kim agreed after Dean and I asked her to cut a service chair in that capacity.
Okay. Great. We appreciate that. Thank you all for your work on that. Any further updates? Counselor Baxter?
No, I'm sorry, no further updates.
I have one. Yesterday, Kim and I both went to the Neighbors in Need Alliance meeting, which is the group, the interfaith group that's working on issues around homelessness with a particular focus this past year of identifying a temporary shelter, possibly both a day and night shelter. And this meeting was really an update on that and then a determining of goals of what going forward. And there was a lot of energy in the room. There were probably, I'd say, almost 4 dozen people there. They came up with issues that they talked about the issues that they faced with coming up with a temporary shelter, and recognized that there are, zone codes and issues like that for a reason. So those were some of the issues around that, but we're complementary in many ways of having access. They pretty much came up with a goal, and they're still defining all of this, but looking at a permanent low barrier shelter. That's what they're looking at. And along with other issues like lockers and support services and issues along that way. 2 points that came away that I wanted to share with all of the counselors and also with the city is that they don't anticipate, their goal is by November of 2020, having some kind of option for a permanent shelter. So that is a good year and a couple of months away. And so that then, it begs the question of what to do in the meantime, and issues around that. And then the other issue is that the Athena group mentioned, and I'm not involved with this discussion, so I'm sure the staff know more about this than I do. They indicated that their recommendations may not be coming till the end of December. And we've been talking about November or something to that. So that too addresses issues around budgeting and around issues, again, that we've been discussing of sheltering for homeless population. So I wanted to share that with you and remind us that we did kind of agree to have a discussion again on sites that might be appropriate for sheltering. So the really good news is it's a committed, caring group of people who take their effort very seriously and are quite generous with their time. The difficulty is that we're looking at least a year out. And I would anticipate, the way things always go, that it would probably be longer than that. And it's dependent upon funding and many other issues.
Thank you for that update.
You're welcome.
Any other updates, Councilor Nosworthy?
No, that's it for me.
I will go. I had I was out of town, but I wanted to update you on the Parks and Rec Board because I did listen to their meeting in its entirety. And they're hard at work on improving their master plan, which we should see soon. They have some revisions relative to some of the language, setting up expectations for the community going into the future. And I think some concerns over the idea that they don't want to give the impression that the plan is a commitment to do all the things on the list. So that's going to hold up the plan getting to us a little bit. There's going to be some revisions involved there. And then Councilor Baxter, I think to your point earlier in our previous meeting, it's really come up in that board and among some of those board members that including their chair, that they're really looking forward to us having a conversation about the role of the boards. And so they're very interested in that. And I just thought I might suggest, after having conversation with both the chair and the backup there, as well as one of the board members, that we invite some of those chairs, board chairs, into some of that conversation in terms of roles and responsibilities, because I think they have a lot to contribute to that discussion at some point, whether it's the first round or the second round or whatnot. But I thought I'd share that with you. And then interesting meeting with the chamber this morning. Dropped in, and our often visitor Monique DeGiorgio was there as well, wearing a different hat than the two hats that she wore earlier, and that was the hat of the Healthcare Alliance, which is a regional group trying to lower the cost of healthcare predominantly for businesses to provide to their employees throughout our communities, which is a really admirable effort. They're using a model that was done in Summit County that has had great success. In fact, when Governor Polis dropped in on our meeting, he was throwing out numbers like a 20% reduction in the cost of healthcare for Summit County as they implemented this very similar program. So the community should look forward to seeing some results out of that alliance. It's really, really encouraging, and it was kind of cool that the governor decided to drop by and hang out in the chamber board meeting this morning for about 20 minutes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Updates?
Well, you heard about my other commission, which is the Airport Commission, and so I won't talk about that. Things are moving really quickly and wonderfully out at the airport. The Library Board met last week as well, and I guess it's a very high-functioning board that we saw them present here a while back for trying to keep the library open on Sunday. They're still adamant about that as well, and should be. They're going to have a scheduled retreat facilitated by our own Amber Blake in the near future, so to set their goals looking into the future. And interesting, their monthly report, they do city council goals and how they respond to city council goals. So goal number 1, which is, just for the record, promote community sustainability through economic, organizational, and environmental resiliency. They reviewed their gas, electric, and water bills and have spent 15.4% less on utilities this year over last year. And so, I mean, just the sustainability program, this is an effort of our sustainability program to challenge each of our departments, in this case the library as a single entity, to have a 15.4% savings on their utilities, pretty significant. So they've also had a 30% increase in ebook circulation, and one note with all our teen issues going on these days, teen attendance at the library is up 30% year to date. And then in goal 3, which is demonstrate government performance through efficient, effective, and innovative city operations, you now can rent a ukulele at the library. You can get ukuleles, bike locks, DVD players, and games that are continually always checked out. So that's their innovation for the month.
Wonder how the parents feel about the ukuleles.
I think it's mostly parents buying the ukuleles. It drowns out the kids. You know, it's like so. That's all I have. Thanks.
That's great. Well, I just wanted to start by welcoming our students, teachers, and staffs back to school today, first day of school. And on that note, I was able to attend convocation at Durango High School last week, where all the teachers came back for their first day back at school. There was some great energy in the room there. And then today I attended Park Elementary School, where Governor Polis started with Lieutenant Governor Diane Primavera, and he welcomed the students there. He's there supporting his full-day kindergarten program initiatives, and I presented him with a key to the city of Durango. So he was very thankful for that, and I told him that next time, if he had allowed a little bit more time, we could give him a tour of the city of Durango and show him some of our history and fun facts. So we'll see if he might join us another time. I also wanted to suggest that I have office hours next Monday, August 26th, from 12 to 1 p.m. here in the City Manager's Conference Room, and I hope to see people there. And with that, let's move on to future potential agenda items. Number 13, anyone have anything for that?
I'd like to respond to the feedback on the goal with maybe a future potential item.
Okay.
I think that I appreciate recognizing that we've made a start, and I also appreciate the feedback from the community encouraging us to think bigger, bolder, and to broaden our scope. So I don't know and also the request to help us set some of the targets, because they also have expertise. So I'm not certain the process of that, but I'd like to find a way to keep engaged and looking at how do we start with this resolution and work toward a bigger effort.
to be clear, you talked about
5.5.
the recently passed resolution on 100% energy. And I think there maybe is some wordsmithing there. If, we haven't had a chance to talk about it, but we heard what they had to say, and, the intent was to honor their request, whatever that might be. I think the other thing I heard more important than a lot of metrics was just buy local.
Yeah.
And I think that was maybe in the expediency that we crafted this, an oversight to reference that particular item. And I don't think there's any issues if, we can give staff some direction to make an amendment to that resolution and be done.
So I agree with that, yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I appreciate the speed with which we worked, and I appreciate the thoroughness and the challenge of us. So, Dean, I agree with your recommendation.
Anything else? Counselors?
Well, because we didn't have this conversation in our study session, I wanted to mention that we had talked with Kevin about doing a massing study for the civic campus at Santa Rita Park. So I wasn't sure if you had any timeline on when we might talk about that in a study session.
At the last council meeting, I think we talked about the first week in September.
He suggested that we might talk about it the first week of September.
Okay. And then we talked also briefly in the study session about possibly putting the role of the advisory boards on a study session agenda. And I believe, did you say October 24th or September 20th?
I think it was September.
September, I think is what you said, yeah.
So that would be great if we could make that happen and include possibly the ethics committee conversation there, because they're also an advisory board, if you will. I will be attending probably, I forgot to mention this, the FLC Senate. I'm going to wait and give them, so they do a retreat and then they have a couple meetings to get themselves straightened out. So then I will attend a meeting after that. That's in process. And we'd also talked about a liaison to SCAPE, and I believe you chatted with Elizabeth about that, and that's...
We actually didn't chat about the liaison. We just talked about the budget.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
Okay. One of the questions that I also had is in the last CML newsletter, I believe it was, I don't have the date on it, it noted that Inglewood had just adopted the standardized sales tax definitions. And I was wondering if we could get an update on where we are with that and what our proposed timeline is for Durango adopting that.
Yeah, actually, I can give you a little bit of an update. Julie and I are making eye contact here. She had hired a consultant to do some work on that, and the initial draft hit my desk, I think, late last week. So I will try to find time to work with Julie on getting those together and reviewed, and circle back to council sometime within the next, I don't know, she may have given me a proposed deadline, but I can't remember what it was, but soon. So I did get a draft, and have not had a chance to even look at them yet, but we will in the coming weeks.
That's great. It's wonderful that we're moving forward on that. That'll make it much easier for the state of Colorado to help us out with internet sales tax. So, the one other thing was that in the July 16th study session, we had talked about chatting with the community, the social services community, about if there were other people who were willing to manage a overnight camping situation, if we could, camping may be the wrong word, a place for people to spend the night overnight, and whether or not if there was a place for us to designate, if there was willingness to participate in managing that. And I don't know exactly if there was yes or no on that. So, I mean, I know you said it was a difficult conversation, but I don't know if you had a chance to, Kevin had a chance to bring that up again.
I believe there's been a comprehensive across the community calling to see who would want to take that on, but we've had some specific conversations with certain groups, and there hasn't been a lot of willingness to say I'll do it myself.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that's it.
No one else? Future potential?
I am going to be attending, chairing the CAST, Colorado Association of Ski Town meeting. Starts Thursday and will go through Friday afternoon up in Frisco. And it's always a fun event, but this year's this meeting's focus is on sustainable tourism. So we're going to have some of the successes and failures and impacts of over-tourism on a number of our Colorado resort communities. And so I'll bring back some data, some talking points on that that'll inform our discussions about futures of tourism planning and tourism dollars and lodgers tax and all that kind of stuff as well. So,
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
with your permission, Madam Mayor and members of the City Council, for the past 12 years, it has been an honor to serve as City Manager of the City of Durango. My 40-year career has been recognized by the International City County Management Association will be recognized at their annual conference in October. I plan to retire in early 2020. This has been a good run. It is my desire to assist the City Council with an orderly transition. The recruitment and selection process to find my replacement will take longer than the 45-day notice requirement that I'm required to give per my contract. This announcement will get the process moving. My career has been distinguished by a good work ethic and high professional standards. I received the Leo Riethmeyer Public Administrator of the Year Award from the University of Colorado in 2016, and the Trailblazer Award for promoting the advancement of women in local government and building an inclusive and diverse workforce. My peers have voted to elect me as their City Manager Association President in 3 different states, unprecedented in the history of ICMA. I'm proud of my accomplishment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
that doesn't get a round of applause, but thank you.
We appreciate you keeping us informed. We appreciate that offer to help us in transition, and thank you very much.
Yeah. We'll have future comments.
Yeah, yeah.
Definitely once that sinks in a little bit.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to administrative, item 14.1, discussion and possible action concerning a motion to convene an executive session for the purposes of discussing the lease, transfer, or sale of real property owned by the city, which is commonly known as the railroad parking lot, as permitted in, and then it went off, CRS 24-6-4024B. May I have a motion?
Actually, I'll put it was A, and then there were two purposes, and then the purpose of conducting a conference with city attorney for the purposes of receiving legal advice under 24-6-4024B. So,
Okay.
sorry.
I'm sorry.
We need to mention both of those.
Not seeing all that. Thank you for clarifying that.
Sure.
So moved.
Second. Oh, that was simultaneous.
Further discussion from council? Ms. Phillips, may we have a roll call?
Councilor Noseworthy?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brookie?
Yes.
Councilor Baxter?
Yes.
Councilor Patine?
Yes.
Mayor Houston?
Yes.